Something happened to my coworker Delia about 8 months ago, and she told me about it in the break room on a Tuesday afternoon, and I have been thinking about it ever since. Because it is one of the most quietly extraordinary things I have heard in a long time. Delia had been seeing someone casually for a few months, nothing officially declared. The kind of situation that exists in that particular middle space where both people know something is there, but neither has fully named it yet. And Delia, being Delia, which is to say, someone who does not chase, does not perform, does not arrange herself around someone else's uncertainty, had simply been living her life and letting the situation be whatever it was going to be. One evening, she ended up at a gathering where this man's close friend group was present. She had met a couple of them before, but this was the first time she had spent any real time in the full circle. And at some point during the evening, she stepped outside with one of his friends, a woman named Rosamond, for a conversation that started about something completely unrelated and then took a very specific turn. Rosamond looked at her at one point and said, very directly, "The way some people are wonderfully capable of being direct, I need to tell you something, because I think you should know." And then she told Delia that in the friend group, when this man talked about her, and apparently he talked about her with a frequency that had become somewhat notable, he talked about her in a way that none of them had ever heard him talk about anyone. Rosamond's exact words were, "We kept looking at each other, because none of us knew he had that in him. None of us knew he had that in him." Delia came back inside after that conversation, and she said she had to spend about 20 minutes just sitting with what she had been told, because it was so different from what was visible in his direct behavior toward her. Because with her, in their actual interactions, he was warm but measured, present but careful. The kind of person who was clearly feeling something significant, but had not yet found his way to saying it out loud to the person it was about. But behind closed doors, in the room with his friends, something else was happening entirely. Something that even his own people had not known he was capable of. Something that was apparently frequent enough and specific enough and unguarded enough that his entire friend group had been exchanging looks about it. And Delia, sitting in the break room, telling me this, cup of coffee in both hands, said, "I wonder how many people have that. Someone who shows up measured and careful to their face, but is completely undone about them the moment they walk out of the room." I have been thinking about that question ever since, and I think the answer is more than most of us realize. And I think you might be one of those people. And I think that is exactly what this reading is here to confirm. Let us get into these cards. Card 1, Two of Cups, what exists between you, is being spoken about as something real, right? Two of Cups lands first, and this card in the context of this reading is not just a love card. It is a recognition card. It is the card of two energies being identified by the people observing them from outside as a genuine match, as something that has a specific quality that separates it from ordinary connection. And what Spirit is showing me with this card as the opener is that the conversations happening behind closed doors about you are not vague or general. They are specific. They identify something real about what exists between you and this person. Something that even people who were not directly in the connection have been able to feel through the way this person talks about you. Here is the practical example for Two of Cups in this position. There is a man named Elliot, and Elliot's friend group had known him for years, long enough to have watched him through several relationships and several of the kind of situations that do not quite become relationships. And they had developed a reasonably accurate internal model of how Elliot talked about people he was interested in. He was complimentary. He could be enthusiastic. He spoke well of the people he dated. But there was always a quality of description in his speaking that kept a certain distance. A quality of talking about someone from a position slightly outside his own experience of them. And then he started talking about you. And the distance was gone. And his friends noticed. Because the Two of Cups quality, in how he described you, the specific, we recognize each other energy. The sense of genuine match, rather than appealing option, was audible to people who had been listening to him talk about people for years. He was not describing an attractive person he was interested in. He was describing someone he recognized. And recognition sounds different from interest. His friends heard the difference immediately, and they looked at each other across the room. That look across the room is your Two of Cups, the external confirmation of something that registers even to people who are only receiving it secondhand through someone else's description. What exists between you has a quality that travels, that communicates itself even through the filter of another person's words about it. And the people on the receiving end of those words cannot believe what they are hearing because they have never heard this person sound quite like this before. Card 2, the sun, he or she lights up. When they talk about you A and D, everyone notices okay. The sun arrives second, and this card is doing something very specific in this reading. It is not just about positivity or good energy in the abstract. It is about a very observable, very specific physical and energetic shift that happens in this person when the conversation turns to you. The sun is visible. That is its defining quality. You cannot have the sun energy around you and hide it. It shows. It illuminates everything in its vicinity. And what Spirit is showing me with this card is that when this person talks about you behind closed doors when your name comes up, or they bring you up themselves, which apparently happens regularly, there is a shift that the people in the room can see. Something changes in their face, in their energy, in the quality of their presence in the conversation. Something gets lighter and brighter and more animated. And the people watching this shift are having their own internal experience of watching someone who did not know they were lit up suddenly become visibly, unmistakably lit up. Practical example for the sun in this position. There is a woman named Georgina, and Georgina had a friend she had been close to for about 12 years. And this friend, a man named Tobias, was someone Georgina knew very well. She knew his tells. She knew the difference between his polite enthusiasm and his genuine enthusiasm. She knew what his face looked like when something really mattered to him versus when he was going through social motions. And one evening, Tobias mentioned someone in conversation, casually, as if just referencing a recent experience. And Georgina watched his face do something she had not seen it do in years. Something that was not polite enthusiasm or social motion. Something that was just real, uncurated. The specific brightness of someone whose interior had just been touched by the thought of another person and whose exterior had not gotten the memo in time to manage the display. Georgina told me later that she had simply looked at him for a long moment and then said to Tobias, "Who is this person?" Because whatever this is not how you normally talk about someone. And Tobias apparently went a very particular shade of flustered. That is the sun. That is what is happening when this person talks about you in the rooms you are not in. They light up in a way that is completely out of their control and completely visible to anyone paying attention. And the people around them are paying attention. And they cannot believe what they are seeing because this specific quality of lit up is new or rare or something they had stopped expecting to see. Your name makes this person glow in company they did not expect to be glowing in. And that glow is the subject of many conversations you will probably never directly hear about. Card 3, Page of Cups, what they say about you has a quality of wonder in it. Oh, this card. Page of Cups in third position, and this is the card that tells me the most specific thing about the actual texture of the conversations happening about you. Because the Page of Cups is young in the best possible sense of the word. Not immature young, full of wonder, unburdened by the cynicism that comes with too many disappointments. Open to being surprised, willing to feel things it did not plan to feel. And what Spirit is showing me is that the quality of how this person talks about you has that Page of Cups texture to it. There is wonder in it. There is a freshness to it that surprises even them as they speak. Like they are discovering what they feel by saying it. Like the act of describing you to their friends is also the act of understanding, in real time, how significant this is to them. Here is the example that makes this so vivid. There is a man named Clarence, And Clarence was not someone you would describe as a romantic. He was pragmatic. He was analytical. He was the person in his friend group who was most likely to apply practical logic to emotional situations and least likely to use language that had any quality of poetry or wonder to it when discussing relationships. And then one night, in a conversation with two of his closest friends about something completely unrelated, he said something about someone he had been spending time with. And what came out of his mouth in Clarence's voice, in Clarence's very pragmatic register, was so unexpectedly specific and so unexpectedly tender that both of his friends stopped talking entirely, just went quiet, because what he said had a quality that they had never heard from him before. Not the words themselves, the quality behind them, the wonder in them. The sense of someone who had encountered something they did not know how to fully describe, but was going to try anyway, because not trying felt like a failure to honor something real. His friends looked at each other in the way that close friends look at each other when they have just witnessed something significant and are not ready to comment on it yet, but are absolutely going to talk about it later. And they did talk about it later, at length, with great interest and some degree of affection for Clarence, who had clearly been undone by someone in a way that was producing poetry out of a man who had never previously shown any evidence of containing any. That is your Page of Cups. The wonder is audible, the freshness is visible, and the people on the receiving end of it are sitting with the very specific delight of watching someone they love get properly, specifically, genuinely gotten by another person for what appears to be the first time in a very long time. Card 4, the star. They talk about you like you appeared in their life at exactly the right moment, yes. The star in 4th position. And this card is adding a very specific layer to what is being said about you behind those closed doors. Because the star is not just about good feeling or positive regard. It is about timing. It is about the specific thing that happens when something arrives in someone's life at the precise moment their life needed it to arrive. And what Spirit is showing me is that part of what makes the conversations about you so notable, part of what has this person's friends exchanging significant looks, is that the people who know this person well enough to know their recent history understand the timing of your arrival. They know what was happening before you. They know what state this person was in. They know what the landscape of this person's interior life looked like in the period immediately before you showed up in it. And because they know all of that context, they understand in a way that you yourself might not fully appreciate what the timing of your appearance means, what it represents, why it matters as much as it does. Practical example for the star. There is a woman named Harriet, and Harriet's closest friends had watched her go through a period about 18 months that had been genuinely difficult, not dramatically, not visibly to the wider world, but they knew. They had been present for the private version. The late-night calls and the honest admissions and the slow, quiet process of someone working through something significant and coming out the other side changed in ways that were still being integrated. And then someone showed up in Harriet's life. And Harriet started mentioning this person in conversations, and the friends who had the full context of the 18 months, who understood exactly what the interior landscape had looked like before, started noticing something in the way Harriet described this person. Something that went beyond simple positive regard. Something that had a quality of arrival to it. Like this person had shown up at the precise moment the ground was ready to receive something real. And in one conversation, one of Harriet's friends said to the others, "I think this might actually be the person." And the others, without needing much time to consider it, agreed, not based on anything they had directly observed between Harriet and this someone, based entirely on the way Harriet talked about them, the specific timing quality, the star quality. The sense of something appearing when the sky had finally cleared enough to see it. That star quality is in how this person talks about you. And the people who know them well enough to know the timing are having their own significant internal response to it. Because they understand what your arrival represents in the arc of this person's life, in a way that may not yet be fully visible to you. Card 5, Knight of Pentacles, what they say about you is consistent A&D has been for a while okay. Knight of Pentacles comes through 5th, and this card is adding something very grounding and very important to everything the reading has covered. Because the Knight of Pentacles is not flashy. He is not dramatic. He does not make sweeping gestures or grand declarations. He is methodical. He is consistent. He shows up the same way every time. And what he does with a quality of sustained dedication that is actually rarer than the more visible forms of devotion. And what Spirit is showing me with this card in this position is that the conversations about you behind closed doors are not new and they are not occasional. They have been happening with a regularity that has become notable to the people in this person's life. You have been a consistent subject, a returning theme, something that this person comes back to in conversation with a frequency that tells the people around them that this is not a passing interest or a temporary preoccupation. Here is the example for the Knight of Pentacles. There is a man named Reuben, and Reuben's best friend Colette had been listening to him mention a specific person in conversations for about 4 months. Not every conversation, but enough conversations. Enough that Colette had started noticing the pattern, the way certain topics would eventually wind back to this person. The way Reuben would reference something they had said or done in context that had no obvious connection. The way the name appeared with a regularity that Colette's internal pattern recognition had logged and filed under significant. And one afternoon, Colette said to Reuben, "You know you have mentioned her in 3 separate conversations this week about completely unrelated things." And Reuben blinked, because he had not noticed. Because when something is genuinely present in your interior, it does not announce its frequency. It just appears, consistently, because it is there. Colette said to him, "I am not saying this to make you uncomfortable. I am saying it because I have known you for 9 years, and I have never seen you do this before. And I think that means something. And I think you should probably figure out what." That is your Knight of Pentacles. The consistency of how often you appear in this person's conversations about apparently unrelated things. The frequency that has become visible to the people around them, even when they themselves have not registered how often it is happening. And the friends who have registered it are sitting with the quiet conviction that the consistent returning to you is telling them something true about what this person carries, even if this person has not yet found their way to saying it directly to you. Card 6, Judgment, even their friends have arrived at a verdict about you, and it is overwhelmingly good, and we close with Judgment. Of course we do. Judgment as the closing card of a reading about what is being said about you behind closed doors is Spirit delivering the final piece of what has been building across every card in this reading. Judgment is the card of verdicts, of assessments that have been made with enough information and enough consideration that they have the quality of something settled, something decided, something that has moved past the stage of open question into the stage of arrived conclusion. And in your reading, the verdict has been delivered, not by a court, by the people who know this person best, who have been watching, who have been listening, who have accumulated enough information from enough conversations to have formed a clear and considered and apparently unanimous conclusion about you. And the conclusion is overwhelmingly, specifically, even their friends cannot believe it good. Not in the vague way of general positive regard. In the specific way of people who have heard someone they know and love talk about another person in a way that has convinced them of something real, of something significant, of something that they now believe deserves to happen, and are quietly, privately, in their own conversations with each other, rooting for. Practical example for Judgment in this position. There is a woman named Philippa, and Philippa's friend group had been through many iterations of watching one of their own navigate the complicated territory of connection and feeling, and the particular courage it takes to let someone matter. And they had formed over years a kind of collective emotional intelligence about when something was real, and when something was circumstantial, and when something was someone talking themselves into a feeling that was not actually there. And with you, with the way this person talked about you, they arrived at their collective verdict quickly. Not because they rushed to judgment, because the evidence was clear. Because the quality of how this person spoke was so different from the baseline they had established over years of listening that the deviation from the baseline was itself the data. They did not need a lot of information. They needed honest information. And what this person gave them, without intending to, without performing, just by talking about you the way they talk about you, was the most honest information they had ever received from this person about another human being. The verdict of Philippa's friends, reached independently and confirmed when they compared notes, was simple. This is the real thing. We do not know exactly what that means yet or how it unfolds from here. But whatever this is, it is real. And they said so to each other in the room when this person had stepped away. And they said it with the specific warmth of people who have been waiting a long time to be able to say something like this about someone they care about. That verdict is yours. It was delivered in a room you were not in, by people who have never met you, based entirely on the way one person lights up and wonders and returns and glows when they talk about you behind closed doors. A few final things before this closes, and every one of them matters. First, the conversations happening about you in the rooms you are not in are more frequent and more significant than you know. You have no direct access to them. You cannot hear them. But they are real, and they are happening, and they are shaping how this person is being held accountable to what they feel by the people around them. The friend group has formed their view, and friend groups that have formed a clear view have a way of making that view known to the person they are rooting for. Something is being said to this person that reflects what is being said about you, and that something is pushing them in a direction. Second, the reason even their friends cannot believe what they said is because this person surprised themselves. The quality of honesty that comes out of people when they talk about someone they are genuinely moved by has a spontaneous quality to it. It arrives before the editing can happen. And what arrived when this person started talking about you was apparently significantly more raw and more specific and more undeniably real than anyone in the room, including the person speaking, had fully anticipated. You produced honesty in someone that surprised them. That is not a small thing. That is one of the rarest things. Third, what is being said about you behind closed doors will eventually find its way to your face. Not always directly, not always immediately, but the internal pressure that builds when someone has been that specific and that unguarded in front of other people about how they feel eventually becomes more than the measured and careful exterior can contain. The friends know. The person knows the friends know. The accountability that creates is real. Something is building toward directness with you that has been indirect until now. Fourth, you do not have to do anything differently. Everything that has produced these conversations, everything that has made this person's friends exchange, looks and deliver verdicts and root quietly for something to happen, has come from you simply being who you are. There is no adjustment needed, no performance required, no calculation about how to produce more of whatever is producing this. You are already producing it by existing as yourself. Keep doing exactly that. Fifth, and what Spirit wants to end on. I want you to carry something specific out of this reading. The image of people who have never met you sitting in a room and listening to someone they love talk about you with a kind of honesty that surprises everyone, including the speaker, and arriving at a verdict that has the quality of something settled and real and rooted for. That is happening right now. In a room somewhere, your name is being spoken with a specific warmth and a specific specificity and a specific quality of wonder that is making people look at each other and feel hopeful about something. And they do not even know you. But because of how you have been described to them by someone who knows you the way this person knows you, They are already on your side, already rooting, already convinced. Let that land somewhere real inside you, and let it inform how you carry yourself into whatever comes next. Because whatever is said about you behind closed doors always finds its way to the light eventually. And what is being said about you deserves to. I went back and told Delia, after I had been sitting with what she shared with me for a few days, what I thought about the question she had asked in the break room, about how many people have someone who is completely undone about them the moment they leave the room. I told her I thought more people had it than knew they had it. I told her I thought the gap between what people felt and what they said directly was often enormous, and that the version of someone that existed in private conversations was frequently almost unrecognizable compared to the measured, careful version that showed up in direct interaction. And I told her that the fact that Rosamond had come outside to tell her what was being said was actually a gift. That most people never get the gift of hearing it. They just have to trust that it is happening. If this reading found you today, consider this your Rosamond moment. Consider this the outside conversation telling you what is being said in the room. Consider this the confirmation that the version of you that exists in someone else's private, honest, unguarded speech is extraordinary in ways that even their own people cannot quite believe. You are being talked about with wonder, with consistency, with a quality of honesty that has surprised everyone in earshot, including the person doing the talking. That is yours. It has always been yours. You just did not know the room it was living in. Drop something in the comments if this found you today. Tell me which card hit. Subscribe so you are here for the next reading, and share this with someone who needs to hear that the way people talk about them when they are not in the room would change everything about how they see themselves.